This is Nursing Uncensored. I'm your host, Adrianne Benning, and I invite you to listen in on conversations I've had with real nurses about the crazy and wonderful lives we lead. This podcast is meant to create laughter in addition to serious discussion, and nothing is off limits. We're always honest, but we're not always safe for work. Please listen responsibly. Welcome to Nursing Uncensored. It's Adrianne, and I'm here today with a friend, former coworker, all of the above, Macy Hall. She is a nurse in the hospital where I work, and she has a really interesting story that I know a lot of you want to hear about. So we are going to talk about, well, first of all, hey, Macy, how you doing?
Hey, Adrianne. It's good to see you again. Unfortunate that it's on these terms, but
yeah. So I am happy to see your face. But yeah, we've got some stressful stuff to talk about. But I know that this is going on all over the country, and there are a lot of people that are curious about what it's like. And so today we're going to talk about your journey from bedside nurse to clinic nurse to COVID ICU nurse.
Sure. Yeah.
That's like Those are some big jumps. So let's first talk about, if you wouldn't mind, talk about your background in nursing,
Sure.
How you started, how you became a nurse, where you got how we met.
Yes. So that feels like a lifetime ago at this point. I graduated from Kirkwood with my ADN, and I started at Mercy Hospital as a nurse back in 2009. And before that, I worked as a nursing aide and under their sort of program where they kind of allowed nurses to get some nursing experience as a student aide. So I did that for about a year, and then I moved to rescue at the University of Iowa, and that's a step down respiratory ICU, as you know. I worked there from 2010 to 2015-ish, having a role there as well as a care coordinator when they were piloting that there. And then from there, I moved to the outpatient world. I worked in the ED and case management, and then I worked in lung transplant as a nurse clinician. And then I've worked since 2017 at IRL Heart and Vascular Center in the outpatient clinics. So I have been out of the inpatient world for a very long time. I am now back in the COVID ICU for surge, what are they calling it? Surge reassignment. So November.
How did they notify you? Like, did you get picked? Did you volunteer? Like, what was
not
the process like? You didn't volunteer.
So back in April, I did a couple days back on rescue just to kind of get my feet wet. They said, if there is a big surge, you would be in the second phase to come back. And so I did 2.5 day shifts there. And I did a little bit of skills orientation in a lab setting. I still have my skills lab. I'm not sure. I probably was supposed to turn this in. But essentially, it's a bunch of NED videos that they wanted us to watch. I did watch some. And then we did some skills training on like the Alaris pump integration and chest tubes and oxygen administration. I was told that it was highly unlikely I would ever be needed because I said I'm not competent. I've been out a long time, 2.5 days with all the changes that have occurred while I've been outpatient is not enough. And we have so many people cross-trained. There's no way we're going to need you. Okay. Went back to my life out at the clinic. And then Suresh had the town hall where he talked about 100 and so nurses who were going to be needed on the inpatient units. And I thought, well, I suppose it's potential, but it's probably unlikely because I'm supposed to be in the second phase. So my nurse manager and the MICU nurse manager were kind of having some background conversations. I found out the Friday of November 6th when everyone was supposed to find out by end of day if they were being transferred or not. My nurse manager called me at about 6:30 that evening. So I thought maybe I was off the hook. And then my phone rang and I was like, no, shoot. And she presented it as, this is going to be, you're going to be on the 4RC ICU. They're opening 10 more beds of MICU. right under the MICU. So the docs and nurses can kind of go back and forth as needed. You're going to be partnered with a nurse, and it's going to be a team nursing approach. So essentially you'll be like their right hand. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, that doesn't sound that bad. It was a huge change in my life, but it still didn't sound as scary. You're going to be partnered with a nurse. So that same week, so they were still sort of in deliberation because they didn't have anybody to really replace me either in my clinic role. So I didn't officially get word that I was going until Tuesday of the following week. And then Friday I was on MICU. I had one orientation day on MICU, and then I went to the 4RC ICU the following week. And the first day I was there, well, they've since called it the jungle because it's a little wild and crazy down there. The first day I was there, I was assigned 2 to 3 patients. I feel like it was 3 that day. I was very overwhelmed. There were ICU nurses for sure who were so helpful, willing to help. But that first week was really chaotic because that was when the surge was happening, the first surge. Well, the first big surge. Mm-hmm. And so that week was very stressful. I cried a lot. I felt really disoriented. I felt really unsure of myself. I had zero confidence, and it was very overwhelming that first week.
So talk a little bit more about that. So I want to try to pinpoint, because I know what I would be anxious about. I'm curious what made it so chaotic, because are these patients, are they intubated, sedated? What's
right.
the level of responsibility here?
Yeah. So initially it's changed over the course, as everything does. So initially a lot of the chaos was just that this was a new unit to everyone, including the ICU nurses, and nobody knew where anything was. Mm. And so there was a lot of, well, we know we need this for this patient, but where do we get it? The meds aren't down here. They're not upstairs. The level of care of the patients, the ones that I am taking and am still taking, are the ones who are essentially potentially maxed out on OptiFlow. So 100% oxygen and, about 50 liters, sometimes with an oxymask too, 15 liters. And they're just on that edge of needing intubated. So they're still talking. They're still typically alert and oriented, and generally they don't have drips going. I've had just a couple drips, like amiodarone, insulin, a little bit of Levophed, nothing too intense as a cross trainer. Mm-hmm. But they're on that fence, and so they're very tenuous as far as cares, because anytime they move, they're desaturating, and you have to keep such a close eye on them, and they're very tachypnic, and it's like, when is it too much? Like when you make that call, we have to intubate them. And so just in my experience, since I've been there, it seemed they try their best not to intubate because extubation generally doesn't go well. I've seen very few people, and I have only been there a few weeks, so I can't speak in general terms as far as how these patients have done after intubation, but I can tell you that I haven't seen anybody on our floor get extubated yet and make it out of the ICU.
And I've heard that from a few other hospitals too, just people that I've been talking to casually online that say that once you're intubated, the likelihood you'll be extubated becomes really sketchy.
Yeah.
Which is scary to think about, because it sounds like we do have a number of patients that are walking.
Mm-hmm. And then you can put them on BiPAP, but that's not sustainable either. That creates a lot of anxiety for them.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, you can't eat, you can't drink.
You can't drink.
Can't communicate.
It's incredibly stressful for them to be sustained on a BiPAP. So it's been really, it was a lot of anxiety because these patients, so I think part of the reason I was chosen to go is because I have experience on rescue, right? I have experience with patients who are maxed out on oxygen, and any movement, they desaturate, and they're very tenuous. But the difference is that those patients on rescue are generally chronically ill patients, right? They have pulmonary fibrosis, they have ILD, they have cystic fibrosis, they're lung transplants who've already been through the ringer. Like, they know what their trajectory is. These patients don't. They're sitting there talking to you, maxed out, and you're trying to explain to them, like, this could get bad really fast. And they're like, well, I want to get up in the chair, and I want to talk to my wife, and I want to do this, and I want to eat. And it's like so hard to explain, like,
you're like, oh, sorry, that gave a lot of feedback. You're like, I don't want to code you today.
No, I'm like, I understand all of those things. And I also don't want to see you get intubated, because I'll probably never see you get extubated. And it's frustrating for the patient. It's frustrating for us. And it's a lot. It's very anxiety provoking, because the majority of the patients that I've taken care of who have been maxed out on Optiflow and then intubated pass away within the next week or so. I mean, they max them out on everything. They do everything they can. One patient did go up to ECMO and is doing okay now post ECMO. But you know what I mean? It's like that one patient did okay. All the others, not so much.
That's, as nurses, I know that I get through the really hard patient cases by seeing the ones that are successful. Like, I get like a second wind when I finally see someone do well. And so it's got to be really difficult to be in an environment where you're not seeing a lot of that. And also to be doing it in an environment, like you said, for me, the most frustrating part about floating is not even so much the specialty, because you do have great nurses that are willing to help, talk you through things, double check your work if you ask them to. But it's more so like, where are the light switches?
I couldn't find the light switches in these rooms for like 2 days. I was like, where? And half of the patients, like, remotes didn't work because it's this new unit, right? They kind of just pieced together. They did a great job with what they had, but there were a lot of electrical issues. There were a lot of just mechanical issues in general. We're working with beds that we got from other areas of the hospital, and they pieced together a unit. And so everything was just a little bit chaotic. And the nurses have been so amazing. The ICU nurses have been great at being helpful and really taking a team approach. But, I anticipated not being primary nurse, and the first day was primary nurse. And I understand that makes the most sense, because team nursing is a skill that people acquire over years. Like, places that do team nursing, it's not, you're trained to do that. It's not something you just jump into. So I understand that.
So what are some differences for people who maybe haven't seen team nursing in play, or maybe don't know what that is?
I've never done team nursing, but my understanding is from the discussions around it is, you'll have two nurses who have more patients. So instead of a primary nurse and two patients, maybe three if one's stable, maybe one if they're very, very critical, but that's even not happening right now. There's not enough staff. In team nursing, the primary nurse in the group will delegate responsibilities to the other nurse. So they kind of divide and conquer, but both of them are responsible for every patient. And I can see why that would get so complicated, because it's who does the assessment, who charts the assessment, who draws the noon labs, who is taking care of the central line, who's taking care of the drips, I can only imagine that
I see how that gets really complicated.
And nurses tend to be pretty independent too, and a little controlling and type A. And so we like to have our own patients and know everything that's been done. So I can see why that team nursing went out the window the minute after it was explored.
Yeah. And I can see the benefit maybe of having one nurse that's looking at the bigger picture, because sometimes when we're running behind, we get very task oriented and we maybe lose sight of okay, why am I doing this? What about this patient's history makes this medication necessary? What should I be concerned about? But I can also see how you don't want too many hands in the cookie jar, because you don't want two people, just like you don't want two people titrating a medication without communicating with each other. So yeah, I feel like team nursing could be a good thing if you have very clearly identified roles, and people are really good at knowing those roles and sticking to them.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like, you don't want to chart something you didn't do or see with your own eyes, you know? But so, yeah, I can see how that would be completely different and even more different than what you're doing in a clinic as a nurse. So just like a different hat, like even when we talk about going from, the room of a patient who needs rehab and recovery and motivation, and then going into a palliative care patient room where it's a very different tone and a very different like goal of care. But yeah, what you're doing is like so different than all of that. And to be doing this kind of like flying by the seat of your pants. Do you feel like it's getting, I mean, I know it changes probably minute to minute, but do you feel like you're acclimating or?
Yes. Part of it too is, you come into a new environment with a lot of unfamiliar faces and a lot of different personalities, and nurses who are burnt out. They are burnt out. They've already been doing this for 9 months. And it's like, here's a bunch of cross trainers to work with. I mean, I'm sure they were thrilled, right? So it's kind of
exhausting.
It's exhausting. And so, it took a couple of weeks to kind of feel out, different personalities and likes and dislikes. And, everyone's been really great, but you have to warm up to people. It takes a minute to get comfortable.
I mean, that's true even when you're not in a crisis. So then you add in all of the stress. And, another thing I wanted to talk about is you've got kiddos at home. So, so that's, another thing to think about and be concerned about. Although, I'd love to hear how you feel about this. One nurse online did a video about how she chose to go to the COVID ICU pregnant because then she knew her patients were negative or positive. She knew she would have the right PPE. Protocols were in place to protect her, as opposed to like being on a regular unit where you might have a patient and you have no idea if they have it or not, and you may or may not have access to PPE. So I'm curious.
That's a good point. I was shocked by all the PPE. Out of the clinic, we were given one, when you walked in to IRL, you were given one mask for the day. And that's the mask, the surgical mask that you wear for the day. So I was shocked the first day. They're like, okay, now doff everything. And I was like, oh, throw it away? Well, throw it away other than your shield, And I was like, and then 95s at that time we were repurposing. Still, they were doing the hydrogen peroxide sanitization. They're not doing that now, except for one style. But I was like,
we've been really frugal with our supply of PPE. So they're basically like, we're good. We're sitting okay right now. So if you're in the COVID unit, like you're actually throwing your shit away. Like we don't hanging out. Okay. That's at least good to hear that we've prepared all of this struggle and not gowning up for C. diff patients for a while.
It paid off. Okay. Yes. I'm throwing everything away and it feels really wrong.
But really good too. Cause you're like, I don't want to wear you again.
Yes, exactly. And so I went from working clinic hours, normal clinic hours, 8 to 5 or to 12-hour shifts, day night rotating, weekends. And so I worked day shift yesterday. I work overnight tonight. And I sort of did that to myself because I haven't worked night shift since early on my rescue days because I got a straight day line very quickly. And my body has no idea what to do with the night shift. So I said, I know they said, well, what are your preferences? Obviously pretty much everybody's going to have to do some nights. And I said, I'd prefer to do just like one a week because I know I'm not going to sleep during the day before and I'm not going to sleep much after because my body is just not programmed that way. And so I have on my night shifts, I haven't slept more than 3.5 hours after. And I knew if I was doing 2 in a row that I would be going into work then very delirious by 4 a.m. and that would be very unsafe. So everyone's like, oh, that schedule's awful. And I'm like, it's the only safe way for me to do it because my body, I haven't pulled overnights for like 7 years.
But it's good that you know your limitations and that you can verbalize that. And I mean, it sucks, but hopefully this is temporary. You know, I don't know how temporary, but
I don't know either.
So as a mom, that's got to also be disruptive, because when you have kids, you can't just be like, I'm going to peace out for 2 days and I'll see you when I'm rested.
I did say, I said, please don't put me on 3 12-hour shifts, because my kids won't have a parent for 3 days. So yeah, especially, and everybody who is pulled from clinics or wherever, right? They have their own lives. They have their own separate lives outside of COVID land. I know that, that need tended to. And so I just so happened to be in the middle of a separation. We're selling our house. We're moving into separate homes. Our closing is December 30th. And we have 2 girls. They're 13 and 7. And they have been at school. They're in the CCA district. They've been at school, except for, of course, right when I started in the ICU, they went virtual. Of course.
When do you sleep?
You know what? Here's the thing. And like on that, how to deal is to lower your expectations. Okay.
Amen. Amen.
That is the only way through. Okay.
Like there's going to be laundry piled up.
Oh yeah.
Dinners are not going to be.
They're not healthy.
We're going to eat. We're going to get through.
Yeah, exactly. So their dad, although he's 50% responsible. Well, we're both 100% responsible. Well, we share the responsibilities. He also leaves very early in the morning. So he leaves before 5 o'clock in the morning. These girls have had to get themselves up on the bus now that they're back in school by themselves. And they are the modern day latchkey kids. I mean, that's what I say. I was a latchkey kid. So
same.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, yep, get your own food. Yeah. Get yourself on that bus in time. You've got a phone. Call me if there's an emergency. Otherwise, don't bother me. Mm-hmm. I'm at work. And when I am here, 12-hour shifts are exhausting, especially if you do a couple in a row, and I'm not accustomed to them. So when I am here, I'm packing up, our house to move, getting all of that settled. That's just constant little things, inspections and remedies and things to sign. And so
I still got the Christmas tree up in the background.
My mother did that.
God bless your mom.
I know. And I said, I was very upset. I was like, Mom, I don't have time this year to put up a tree, and the girls are upset, and I really have to sleep before this night shift, and I can't sleep. I was like, I was so stressed out. And she came over with her mask on and put up a tree.
Mom, thank you, Mom.
I know.
Yeah.
And this is the only spot in my house that doesn't look like a train wreck. So that's why I'm sitting on the floor here.
This show is all about real life. So you're making it work. You are making it work.
Just sit in the living room. Yeah. So it's been very, it's disturbed me. It's disturbed my kids' routines too. I used to be able to hang out here until they got on the bus to go to clinic, because I had a medical assistant who was really great, who knew like my kids have to get on the bus, and I'll be in a few minutes late, and she could room the first patient. And that's not the case here. I need to be at work, receiving a report at 7 a.m. at the hospital. So it's changed a lot. So I have definitely lowered my expectations. As far as school, my kids aren't doing that well necessarily. My 7-year-old, doesn't really matter. She can read a little. That's fine. Do simple number math. My 13-year-old, she already struggles in school as it is. She has some ADD. She just has a very hard time. She's not doing well, but I'm not, I'll figure it out next year. I'll figure it out when this just settles. I cannot stress about that. And I don't want her to stress about that. So I don't trouble her. I mean, I'll look at her grades. We'll talk about it. She tells me what she's struggling with. And I say, we'll figure it out at a better time,
Yeah.
I'm not all that worried about you losing 1 year of your education.
And honestly, those are things that there's so much else that's important. I'm not a parent. I don't claim to be an expert, but I know that as a former kid, that not having somebody on your ass when it's already a difficult time is beneficial.
Right.
So I personally think you're taking the right approach, because if you're stressed out, your kids are stressed out, kids pick up on the energy in the room. So you're right. Like sometimes you just got to say, you know what? we'll kill it next year.
Yeah.
Okay, because I had school years where like stuff was going on at home and my grades weren't that great. But you know what? I still was able to grow up into a good student that was able to do what I wanted to do. So it's not a lost cause. And I think you're really smart to not make your kids feel like they're failing in some way on top of dealing with all of this. Like, it's too much.
The 7th grade teacher, and I know the teachers are doing their best. They're also superheroes this year. They send out a little thing every day, like, this is what your kid's supposed to be doing, an email. I don't even open it. Like, I don't even open it. I'm like, this can wait. Like, I don't have time to go read her agenda every day, you know?
I know
they're like bare minimum right now.
Yeah. There's a CNA that I'm working with right now, and she works night shift with me. And then during the day she goes home and she is actively participating in her kids' homeschooling, and she is so tired.
No, that has to be exhausting.
It's gotta be. And her kids are a lot younger than yours. Yeah, like they're just newly in school. And so these are really the important, like you're right. Your kids can read, they can do math, like they're not failing. They're just maybe not A+ students at the moment, which is how many of us weren't, you know?
Right.
So it's okay. But yeah, it's so much to ask. So I'm really blessed that in my trajectory in life, that I've chosen not to have children. Everybody has to make that choice for themselves. But I have a lot of respect for parents that are making it work right now, because I can't even imagine. I'm like just keeping my own stuff together. So
it's a tough season for everybody. Everybody needs a lot of grace, and I was also, therapy is important. Everybody should have some therapy right now. Every single human needs some therapy. You cannot measure suffering. So, it may seem like, well, I feel like I don't really have that much going on compared to these people, but it doesn't. We all have our things and they all need worked out. So I was talking to my therapist this week, and, she's like, well, what are you doing to try to manage all of this? And I was like, cutting out anything I can. She's like, do you have anything left to cut out? And I'm like, no, not really. I'm kind of bare bones life right now. And I said, I'm still trying to exercise a couple days a week. I used to exercise like 5 days a week. Like that was my favorite thing to do. But now I just try to get like a walk in once in a while. And she's like, well, let me tell you. She's like, all the serotonin in the world isn't going to help you right now. Like, she's like, there's not enough. You're in crisis mode between being a cross trainer on a COVID unit from the clinic, moving, a separation. So really it's essential to just lower the expectations, cut corners where you can, and just give yourself a lot of grace. That's what I'm doing.
Good. Yeah, we got to be gentle with ourselves. It's really easy to beat yourself up, especially when we live in the world of like social media and people show you what they want you to see. And it's really easy to be like, well, but look at all that. You're right. You can't measure suffering. Your feelings are not negated by somebody else's struggles. And so I agree with you. I've also been in the process of starting up regular counseling. I use the hospital has the employee assistance program where they let you do some like crash counseling for a limited time. And the therapist that has been with this program long term, I also saw her when I first became a nurse and had that like, oh shit, what did I get myself into crisis that most of us go through at some point as a new nurse. Yeah.
My whole first year was horrible.
Yeah. And, we have that in common, is that anxiety is a thing that even when you're actively working against it, all the breathing techniques in the world sometimes are really not going to save your ass.
No.
But I want to try to get this particular guest on the show because I found this video series on YouTube that are actually kind of like, for lack of a better term, like body hacks. like ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, because, you know, the things that people offer for anxiety is like, do something you love, take a walk. And it's like, well, I'm on shift.
Yes.
I can't go somewhere for 5
I have
minutes.
2 critically ill patients right there.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. This is stressful.
So some things that I have started incorporating where I can that have been helpful to me. So one of the things that I learned is that the ways that we can trigger our vagus nerve to help kind of introduce the parasympathetic nervous system to kind of slow everything down is so if you raise your soft palate, so that's like an R, like R, like pirate R sound, or if you yawn, that stimulates the vagus nerve. So since I'm masked, I'm yawning all the time. And
you can't see me.
So I'm like, okay, the yawn is helpful. She also talked about, what was the other one? Humming also stimulates the vagus nerve. So there's been like all these little body hacks that I've been searching for, trying to figure out ways to just like chill myself out at work.
I know it's so frustrating, especially because, you know, I was talking to my therapist and I said, you know, this happened. I had this panic attack at work, and I said, there really wasn't much going on. I mean, they were just tubing the guy in the other pod. The guy behind me was dying, and I was waiting on my admission, who was septic and on pressors. Like, but there really wasn't that much going on. And she's like, no, it doesn't sound like it, you know?
And as nurses, we change, you know, we're so used to having so much going on that we it wasn't that busy.
Like, if your patient's not imminently like coding, you're like, it's okay. Like
and the average person is listening to you like, excuse me?
I know.
What was going on? Like most people would be stopped dead in their tracks by even one of those things happening in the periphery. So we got to remember to give ourselves credit. Like there's a lot going on all the time. And hospital units, especially monitored units, are breeding grounds for anxiety because you've got the bing bings.
The alarms were going off and people were running down and they were grabbing the intubation box and the RSI kits, and people are asking where everything is. And I'm like, I think that's there, but I'm not really sure. Let's, you know, I'm trying to be helpful, but I don't really.
And even when you don't realize this kicks up our sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
And so what people don't realize is it's not just about feeling stressed. Like it's actually shooting all this cortisol into your body.
Awful.
And those long-term cortisol, you know, blasts, boluses we're giving ourselves, that's not great. So I think it's great that you recognize this, that you're in therapy. I think we need to be more open about it. I think that this is the age where people are finally starting to clue into it on a mass spectrum, because now we have all of these like apps that people can access, you know, just to have like on the fly, like grab your phone, talk to a therapist. This is legit because there's actual merit in doing that. Like it actually makes us think about how good it feels after you just like dump on your best friend everything that went on.
I love dumping on people. There's only like a select few people that you can dump on with all of the nursing stuff, you know, because it's very overwhelming. And you know, I never want to bring someone down with me. I just want to dump, you know?
And I'm one of those people that if it's like not somebody that I work with, or if I wasn't there, I'm like, dump away. I can compartmentalize that. So I'm a good receiver of that because it doesn't stress me out.
It doesn't stress me out either. You can dump on me all day. It doesn't bother me.
That reminds me. I was going to say, if you see me on Volt on one of the night shifts and you're struggling to stay awake, just, I know we're not like that close, but you can totally dump on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So I am lucky, you know, one of the cross trainers I used to work with on rescue, Kelly, and so we dump on each other here and there, and she always checks up on me if we're working the same shift. We're generally in different pods since we're both cross trainers. They do try to, thank goodness, put us in pods with at least one ICU nurse. So that's very important.
So you've got like a resource, basically.
Yeah, we have a resource, and I do feel like we're helpful in the way that we can assist them with proning people and head turns, and making sure if they're in another room that there are bolus of propofol and fentanyl and Levophed and all those things outside the room, because they keep all the pumps outside of the room, all the drips, so we can just titrate them without having to go in and out of the COVID rooms, aren't running dry. So I do feel like as time has gone on, I've gotten more helpful, and I'm learning a ton.
I bet.
I just didn't really want to learn it in this way, as no one did. None of us wanted this.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too. I just try to recognize like, no, nobody wanted this. If somebody has a bad attitude or is having a crappy day, I'm like, you didn't want that either. I get it.
Yeah. And I was, as a rescue nurse, I got the emails that was like, okay, you guys might start floating. And I had the thought for a minute, I was like, well, if they're going to start floating us, I can't handle the anxiety of shift to shift. Will I go? Will I not go? Will they pull me mid shift? And so I almost had the thought that like, based on what I've been hearing about not just being like thrown to the wolves and having an awful experience. No. And because other ICU nurses that I know, like on social media, have reached out and said, you would be awesome. If it got to a point where they started pulling rescue nurses, I think I would just volunteer to go, because then I would just know. I would just know I'm there. Because the like, what if, maybe not, that is the stuff that makes me like just.
Yes. So that's anticipatory anxiety, right?
Yes.
It's horrible.
And that,
so
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I think all of my anxiety is anticipatory, because for the hour leading up to my shift and maybe the first half hour of my shift, I am nauseated. My heart is racing. I feel like the world is crumbling around me.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just relating.
No, but it's true.
The night before too, I'm like, oh, what hell?
Yeah. And so, but then once I do my assessments and I meet my patients, I'm usually like, I got this.
So
it's all that anticipatory, like, but there's so much unknown, even if I'm not floating to ICU, am I floating? Will I be the only staff nurse with a bunch of float nurses? Like,
yes.
So all nurses right now, I don't think that people that don't work medicine realize that we need to kind of be ready for everything. Yep. Like you were saying, you don't want to go in tired and out of it, because titrating drips takes so much focus. And if I'm tired, I could transpose a number and really
easily.
And we have double checks in place for that reason. But still, you don't want to be going through your shift feeling like, I've had those shifts where I'm like, if I could just close my eyes. That's like car crash danger.
It is. It's worse than nursing drunk, right? That's how I thought. I'm like, and me going, working nights like 2 in a row, and not sleeping for actually 2 days is like going in completely wrecked, like that would be horrible. But
I'm grateful for you.
I'm so glad. On the anticipatory anxiety aspect, so I messaged my nurse manager yesterday. I said, hey, what have you heard about us, potentially coming back? I think it's unlikely. So when I started, there was like that big initial like wave. And now I feel like we're in this calm before the next huge wave. After Thanksgiving, we have to get to that. I feel like it's coming. It does feel like the calm before the storm. I hope it doesn't. It's probably my anticipatory anxiety kicking in, like it's coming. But she said, well,
we still have Christmas ahead of us. Hanukkah is going on right now. This will air after the holidays, but it's a legit concern.
Oh, yeah, it is. And she told me, well, as of now, you're planning to come back January 3rd, but then you'll be on like a week by week kind of call there. If they need you, then you'd go there for a week. And I was like, no. So I messaged, this will come out after everything's figured out, so it really doesn't matter. I messaged the MICU A&M and I was like, just keep me for a month then. Like, just keep me.
Yeah, don't bounce me. No bouncing.
That's not good for me. That's not good for my kids. Like, I have to have some sort of established plan of like chaos control. I mean, I'm not going to have everything figured out, but controlled chaos is much better than chaos. I shouldn't reply yet, but I'm like, no, someone just needs to own me. I don't want to go back and forth.
And I get that. You just can't have, am I going to be working 8 to 5 day shift this week? Yes. Am I going to be balls to the wall night shift? Like it's too hard to flip back and forth. And you need it's like we've talked about, with flipping back and forth between, patients that you're trying to get recovered and patients that, are end of life. It's the same way you have these different mindsets with a clinic nurse versus like an ICU nurse. Your assessments are different. Your interactions with your patients are totally different. It's got to be really difficult to flip back and forth. Just professionally, that doesn't even take into account your eating schedule, your sleeping schedule, like your
life
moving
in general, life outside of work.
So I think people that don't that know what nurses are doing are appreciative, and some people just have no idea the level of disrupt this has created. And with the way our leadership, state leadership, not our hospital, I feel good about the changes and how fast and transparent our hospital has been with most of it. There are some things I don't like these involuntary reassignments. Like I'm like, did you guys send out an email asking for volunteers?
Right.
Like, did you guys tap into all of the nurses that are like, I want to work in the ICU? You know, that like,
no, I know they didn't, because I've had nurses approach me who say, I cross-trained to the ICU and I'm still on my gen med floor. Why are you from a clinic? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's also really easy to be critical in hindsight, you know?
Yes.
But I think that it's really important that any leaders listening to this need to involve their nurses in these decision-making processes, because, there are so many choices before just mandating nurses to do things. Because wouldn't you rather have, a core group of nurses that are really into this reassignment than to take, especially since I know a lot of nurses that have gone to the clinic, it's because you don't like the schedule. It's because you have young kids. I know that you and Kelly, and I think maybe a couple of the other nurses that have been reassigned, have families. And so one of the reasons we went to clinic was so you could have a normal friggin' life.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, when we look back, it'll be really easy to see kind of where we misstepped. But what I was going to say is our state leadership, I have. And I'm not going to get into all the horrible.
No, we could talk about it for days.
But I guess the bottom line is I do worry that there's another wave coming. I have not yet eliminated the possibility in my mind that I'll end up in the ICU. But like I said, if it came down to it where they were like, we're going to start floating, I'd be like, just take me, just sign me up. So in the meantime, I've been trying to do prep. Like I just renewed my ACLS, like I was talking about with another podcaster. I just interviewed a CVICU nurse right before I talked to you. I was talking about how this was like my first ACLS renewal where I like knew all of the rhythms.
That's good.
I handed in the test and I was like expecting her to like mark it all, be like, you need to do this. And she was like, you missed 2. And I was like, what? Huh? So I was really excited.
I am competent. I'm a competent nurse.
I finally fucking figured out heart blocks.
Right.
But I still, it's still super anxiety provoking. You have my personal thanks for doing this, even though I know you weren't given the choice. I might see you there one day.
Yeah, you might see me there. So I do feel like our leadership has been great, and they've far surpassed many hospitals' leadership. We're very lucky to have them, but there have been some missteps along the way. I
think we need to find ways to be as vocal as we can be. That's really difficult to do when you're already exhausted and you're like, I don't have time to email management. But
I know compensation is important, though. We should be appropriately compensated. I know we're getting the shift differential, as we should when we're working off shifts, but I don't think that we're being compensated as far as our lives really being
completely upheaved.
And I know a lot of the nurses feel that way who are cross trainers. So and we are Iowa nice, so like we're like, well, we're we want to do our best. We want to be here for our fellow nurses and for our patients, and we do. That's true. But
it's true that we
compensated. You can do both.
And for those that don't know, Iowa's already at the bottom of the list nationally for how nurses are compensated. And, we work for a very large hospital. So it's even better where we are than in the rest of Iowa. And that's pretty sad.
Iowa's a sad state to be a nurse.
I have friends that live, my friend just graduated from school and is about to take her NCLEX. She lives in Minnesota. So she's been applying for jobs. She lives in Minneapolis specifically. And she was like, if you come here, your pay rate will literally double.
Yes.
Same work.
Yep.
Different state.
Double.
Double.
Yes, I've looked, I know, because I've looked, even with cost of living and everything, we also live in one of the most expensive places to live in Iowa. So yeah, we might make a little bit more at our hospital than other people in Iowa, but Iowa's still, 49th for nursing wages?
Something like that.
It's like 48 or 49. And then we also live in the most expensive area to live in. And now you're just, they kind of just reassign us. It's like, please compensate us appropriately just for once. Like, here, do us a solid.
And not to mention that like this, we don't know how much longer this is going to go on. So
yeah,
I hope that it doesn't go on for very long. I hope they would at least after some time maybe swap people out, because burnout is very real. And we've also seen across the country nurses leave their hospitals because of the situations or the way they've been reassigned or the way hospitals have handled PPE.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be, we shouldn't have to quit our jobs to be protected. You know what I mean?
No.
So I am grateful that we have PPE. I always like to end on a positive note.
I know. I am very grateful for the people. The ICU staff have been amazing. They've been so helpful and so patient when I couldn't clearly floundering the majority of the time, or I peek out the little square window and I'm like, help. I know. Yeah, it's exactly like sign language.
So there's still a lot to be grateful for, because, we all have to band together. It's like sink or swim. We got to work together. But I hope that people that are listening recognize what a sacrifice it's been and how much you've had to deal with in terms of just changes. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting when policy changes now to have to change like everything you're used to doing. And there's so much. Even as a step down nurse, I still feel like I'm learning constantly. And so that can be intimidating, but as stressed as you may be, I feel like you're taking it with grace. And I'm
trying my best, because I just feel like, if you can't give up, there's been moments where I'm like, I just can't do this. It's like, well, you can. And there's people supporting me. I have a good support system through friends, even though I don't get to see them face to face.
Just to make matters worse, then we don't even get our usual coping mechanism.
I've got my therapist.
Thank God for therapists. Oh my goodness.
And I'm going to have some really good stories, because holy crap, there is really nothing like being kind of tossed into an ICU from a clinic, and there's just going to be so many stories. So.
You'll have to come back and just tell stories at some point. Like when this is in the rear view, you can come back and be like, there was this one guy.
Yes.
I actually mentioned in another episode, there was a patient that I floated to the cardiac step down, and this patient was almost to the point of discharge. But I was reading through his hospital history, and he had been like proned and supinated a number of times. He had been intubated for so long that like the day before they were going to trach him, he self-extubated and was able to breathe on his own.
That's wild.
And I was reading it, like I was going through note after note, just like reading it like a soap.
How did this happen?
I was reading, and I was like, oh, buddy, you have no idea how lucky you are.
Yes.
Just stories like that I'm like, this is unlike anything we've seen before. And, someone else said to me, Kristen, that works on our unit, she said, I can't imagine looking back on this decades from now and saying like, I did nothing.
I know.
So even though we're not doing things by choice, we are part of a growing field of nurses that really are stepping up to like help save the world. So I just wish everybody else would make it a little bit easier on us and wear their masks and distance.
Wear your mask, distance. Don't go to your huge family get-togethers. I know it doesn't matter because it's later after the holidays, but Everyone knows I had a strong stance on that.
we've got New Year's Eve, Easter, St. Patty's Day, Cinco de Mayo. People need to remember that, like, it's really sad to lose these moments of celebration, but if we're ever going to get past this thing, we need to just fucking suck it up for a minute and like get rid of it. And I've been asking everybody as well, no shame either way, I'm just polling nurses, when the vaccine becomes available, or, you know, I say, hey, I've got the vaccine right here. Do you roll up your sleeve? Are you hit me?
Yes, I want it right now. Like, yes.
So you feel safe? This is safe.
I feel safe. I feel 100% safe. I think that the benefits, and that doesn't mean there are no risks, and that's what people struggle with, you know. But the benefits, like, vastly outweigh the very minimal risks, and the risk is what we don't know, you know. And so people struggle with that a lot. And but what we do know is that it's very effective, and so far has been found to be incredibly safe. And I am here for that. I am here to do my part in ending this pandemic. And I also am, you know, as hard as this position has been that I'm in, I'm thankful for being part of the nursing team who's in the fight against COVID. You know, I'm thankful to be in the group of nurses that I'm in.
Yeah, we've got some, and our hospital as well. There are some pretty badass nurses.
They're such badasses.
There are so many nurses that I look up to. I've floated in non-COVID times. I've floated to MICU, and I'm just like, I'm amazed at the way people work together and the stuff they know. I learn something every time I go there, and I love to ask questions. And I've had and you know, I was a nursing assistant in the hospital for so long that once in a while, I mean, now not so much because I'm masked, but I would like go to another unit and they'd be like, wait a minute, I think I know you. Were you a nursing assistant? And I'm like, yes, I was. So, and then people are like, oh, hey. And then, you know, the protective professional sheath comes down and they're like, oh, you're going to learn some shit tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm really grateful that we have the team that we have. And,
they've been amazing.
I became a nurse like right around the time that you were exiting rescue. And so we never have gotten to work together, but you are one of the people that I really respect and look up to.
Thank you very much.
I would come into work as a nursing assistant. I did work day shift for a short time. And I do feel like you're a valuable member of our team. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel that way about you as well.
Thank you. You know, I've grown a lot. Rescue is an amazing unit. People that have gone to other units or have gone to travel, they say there's no place like rescue.
Yeah.
So I'm really blessed to have the team.
Rescue's great.
Yeah. And, you know, our long-term nurses are amazing, like our old guard, IPCU, shout out to them. So I'm really.
What's funny too is I'm working with David again. So he's now CRNA.
Yeah, like his trajectory was amazing. I remember when he I can't
was a nursing assistant with me.
And I remember he might have been one of the nursing assistants that maybe like oriented me to rescue. I don't remember, but I know I worked with him, and now
now he's just taken off.
But that's what's so amazing about our profession is like the sky's the limit, and if you want to do something, there are paths to do it.
There are so many trajectories you can take. So
I hope you get back to clinic life soon.
I don't know if I want to go back to clinic.
Oh, that's like a whole other episode.
That is a whole other episode. I don't want to work in a COVID ICU because it's very depressing, and I don't want COVID to be, you know, where we are at with it right now.
Yeah.
But I have enjoyed hands-on patient care again. I wish I want to do a little bit of both, you know, that would be ideal. So hopefully I can find something. I know. There's a will, there's a way, right?
Part-time, PRN.
Yes, exactly.
Options.
So they did away with a lot of the PRN positions.
Oh, did they?
For money reasons, you know, because people would come work PRN and then get paid over
not ever pick up
extra or not pick up, or if they were like 60% and then picking up, they were getting benefits or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It got complicated. So
Yeah.
But maybe now after this, they'll be like, actually, let's have some hands on deck, and have a requirement for how many shifts you have to work or something. That would make sense to me.
There are ways that we do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for chatting.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I love talking with old familiar faces.
Yeah.
It's like having friends on the show. It makes this, less stressful, a lot of fun. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad we got to talk. And I always end the show by wishing everybody happy nursing. So happy nursing, Macy.
Happy nursing to you.